This town is your town. This town is our town. This town was made for you and me. Hello, everybody. This is Brian O'Haron, episode 11 of Spreading the Word, the program dedicated to educate as much as possible the citizens of the town of Winchester, the city of Winsted, and its two lakes about the total rewrite of the planning and zoning regulations taking place now in our town, city, and lakes. The first public hearing for this total rewrite has been held, and I estimate about 110 or 20 people, give or take. It's hard to count them because they go in and out all the time for various reasons. Showed up at the Pearson Band Room on September 20th at 7 p.m. as was previously scheduled, and listened to the presentation by the consultant, Sean Suter of Graydon Land Use, that was hired to help the small committee of P&Z and ZBA members prepare this total rewrite of the planning and zoning regulations that was presented at this public hearing. The consultant presented at the beginning of the meeting his view and reasons for the way that he suggested we construct the planning and zoning regulations. There were a lot of good ideas there, most people thought, in the structure, not necessarily the content. The devil was in the details, is what most people thought, and that's what was discussed by most of the people who stood up to speak. I guess there were 10 or 15 of them altogether. Some spoke twice during the meeting. That lasted 3 hours. Started at 7 o'clock and went on till about 10 o'clock or so, give or take 5 or 10 minutes. There you see the consultant speaking to the audience. There were a few questions and answers, but mainly it was a presentation. The consultant mainly explained what I call the bookkeeping aspects and process for dealing with the planning and zoning regulations, to make it easier for planning and zoning, and hopefully easier for applicants and their land use engineers and attorneys to get their approvals or denials. It was a way to handle and manage the planning and zoning regulations in a much easier manner than perhaps was done in the past. Not perfect, of course, but probably better than was done in the past. They were structured differently and easier to get through, and common terms were used and set of initials and things like that. So that was all good, and he was commended for that. He also had his ideas from his experience coming into town for his interview and being around town once he was chosen as the consultant, he observed a lot about our town and had some ideas about how to progress with the planning and zoning regulations. Not everybody agreed with his approach, but his approach was incorporated into the totally written planning regulations that were being discussed at this meeting. Again, the devil is in the details, so once it was opened up for public comment, after about, let's say, a half an hour, everybody began to ask their questions about how their property was handled in the details and how it would be better to change that to something more agreeable to each of the people who spoke with their questions. The first speaker was a man who spoke about his property being moved into the Highland Lake District and all the reasons why he was not in favor of that. There were many reasons. I won't repeat them all here. You can see them in the 3-hour video that I hope to put up on YouTube that was taken of the meeting. You can watch and listen to him speaking if you watch that video. It was taken by Tim, who often takes videos of town meetings so they can be played on Charter TV and or watched by people who were absent from the meeting, such as the two first-team commissioners that weren't there. They had other activities elsewhere. I believe that they should have scheduled the meeting when they could be there. That's what professionals would have done. But they're volunteers, of course. That's usually the reason they give. They're only volunteers. But when I'm a volunteer, I attend the meetings. And I think I only missed one in 3 years, as my granddaughter was graduating from high school in Michigan, and I drove the family out to attend the graduation. There are some disadvantages of being placed in the Highland Lake District. Maybe higher taxes or views of the lake or something like that. So this gentleman was trying to point those out to the Planning and Zoning Commission. During this opportunity, he had to speak to them, probably for the first time. The next important speaker was attorney Judith Dixon, who owned some property downtown and spoke for quite a while about why she didn't want the zoning changed in that area. Her reasoning was very good. I'm thankful that she gave it, because I've been mainly concentrating on the needs of people at Highland Lake and haven't really delved into the town and Winchester people's problems too much. But Attorney Dixon owns property downtown and was very concerned about her rights under the new proposed totally written planning and zoning regulations, so she showed up to speak up. And I commend her for that. Everybody needs to do that. Whether she talked to Steve Sedlowski or the town manager beforehand, I do not know. But I also recommend that to everybody, as they may be able to have discussions with other P&Z members between meetings in an attempt to convince them to change some of their decisions, or at least to consider changing some of their decisions. For various reasons, the Planning and Zoning Commission doesn't seem to ask for feedback until very late in the game, when a lot of the irons are already in the fire, and sometimes it's very hard to take them out. They're trying to move fast, too fast in my opinion. Fast, and faster, rather than listen to the town residents at the earliest stages in zoning regulation development. The next important speaker was Blaine Aythorne, whose grandfather owned a cottage on Highland Lake, and his father and mother, and he was born here in, I think, 1962, he said. And he was raised here, and then he went off and formed a business and works all over the world. He owns property near the old pin shop on Highland Lake. He owns 2 big pieces of property, and they are zoned differently. And he got up and, in a very professional manner, explained his concerns about his property. He had already talked to the planning director a few days earlier, and the town manager, who also sat in on part of the meeting, and explained to him what his concerns were. He was now at the public hearing to explain to the Planning and Zoning Commission and everyone else publicly what his concerns were and their future under the new, totally rewritten planning and zoning regulations that were being discussed at this public hearing. He didn't like some of the assignments that his property was given, the zoning assignments, and he's seeking to change them for the good of his retirement and the good of our tax base and the good of all residents in the town. He made his points, and, as with the others, they made a lot of sense. The next speaker was Tom Hill, the realtor that is handling the sale of the 670 acres along the old Route 8 corridor up to Highland Lake. Plenty of land, plenty of opportunity. It's where the big development was going to happen before the crash killed it. Tom pointed out that he would like to see his designating zone changed so that he could sell to more of a variety, or attempt to sell to more of a variety of uses. He had all kinds of ideas. He was out trying to find people. He's a commercial real estate salesman, trying to find people that were interested in this property to come to our town, pay a lot of taxes, perhaps provide a lot of jobs, or homes for people that would pay a lot of taxes. Tom, being a professional, presented his case rather well and made everybody think. Tom even offered to consider putting land in the land trust if the land was sold to people who were agreeable, as the previous owners were. I think they offered to put 126 acres into the land. He made everybody think. I'm sure they will contemplate his thoughts before the next public hearing, and we may hear more about it before then. Because, as I will say later in the program and explain to you, this public hearing, for many reasons, some of which will be discussed in this program, will be continued. It'll be continued on October 11th, 2016. Between now and then, they can't discuss these issues. It's against the law to do so. They have to wait till the next public hearing. So they won't be discussing them at their regular P&Z meetings that may be between now and then. Another important speaker that evening was Carol Zacchio from Shore Drive, who was concerned about the height of buildings and exactly how this height would be established if the property was to be developed any further under the new, totally rewritten planning and zoning regulations that are being proposed at this public hearing. She asked some very important questions, and then there was a long discussion with Commissioner George Clausen, who had some experience with the other people talking about these issues. So they went back and forth for quite a while, lasted quite a while. You can hear it when you go to my YouTube program that runs the whole of the public hearing with pictures, no comments from me, just purely runs the meeting. That lasts 2 3/4 hours. It's a long time. When you get done with a meeting like that, it's hard to get to sleep afterwards, I'll tell you that. Especially when you're my age. And you'll be able to see all that on there. So I won't go into it now. If you do watch the whole 2 3/4 hours on my YouTube posting, and I'll tell you how to get there before the end of this program, you could fast forward through it. I'll try to give you an indication of what's where on during the program, so you don't have to watch it all if you don't want to. You may be only interested in certain parts of it. I understand that. 2 3/4 hours is a bit too much for anybody, I think. But the devoted, people really interested in this issue, will watch it and refer it to others. I'm sure of that. That's why I'm posting it on YouTube. By the time you see this program, it'll already be posted. Partly because of the wide distribution we had spreading the news after Section 10.6 was removed in a rush by this current Planning and Zoning Board, because it didn't allow them to refuse enough applications without even so much as a letter from the town attorney saying why it should be removed. That's in the public domain. There were meetings there between some of the P&Z commissioners, and I guess the chairman of the P&Z, and the attorney. And there was a letter written, as I said in previous programs, about the attorney's view on 636 East Wakefield Boulevard approval under Section 10.6. About 100 to 110 or 20 people on and off showed up. Some came back from their winter residences. Some just came in from places around Connecticut. Some stayed here and didn't leave because they wanted to attend the public hearing. So there were a lot of interesting speakers. The next important speaker was a man representing himself and his wife who had a summer cottage on Highland Lake, and he wanted to know what would it be his rights under the new, totally rewritten planning and zoning regulations being proposed and the subject of this public hearing. Another important presentation was made by an East Lake Street resident, and he pointed out that the 670 acres and other big properties in town, and maybe even some of the old buildings, might be used for data centers of some sort or another. Those weren't his exact words, but he thought that would be good. He thought that would be an excellent use, and it would also attract good people to the area to work in these places. He was very positive about that. He was very positive about trying to get new businesses into the town that would fit here and attract good workers and good families to help with our financial problems. He was very good. People agreed with him. I certainly agree with him, and I did mention it at the meeting when it became my turn to speak. We'll deal a little bit with that a little bit later. Not a lot, but a little bit. The devil is in the details, you know. No matter how well we keep the books, if the numbers inside aren't advantageous doesn't help at all. The devil's in the details. Another man got up from around the lake, a neighbor of Mrs. Zaccheo, who spoke earlier, and defended her, said good things about her, and had a few questions of his own. That's the kind of thing we'd like to see. Neighbors helping neighbors rather than squabbling with them over an inch of land. Resolve their problems with planning and zoning and other commissions and committees and boards and things like that. I wish more people would get up and do the same. That's why we're all trying to spread the word. Get neighbors to talk to neighbors, relatives to talk to relatives, friends to talk to friends, families to talk to families, especially their own family and their own family members. That all helps. That's what our country's about. And no matter what's going on around us, we have to practice that approach, because it's the only way out of this morass we're in and have been in for many years. Everybody knows about it. They're trying to change the name of the town in a way from Winsted to Winchester, because Winsted is getting a worse and worse reputation over the last 10, 20 years. And Winchester is seen as a bedroom community now that the farms are gone and the mines are gone. There's a lot of camps there, too. That's all part of being a bedroom community. Camps are bedrooms for the summer, for the campers, for the city people that want to come to the country. That's one of the better aspects of our town. But it can't be an end in itself. We have to have balance. We've got an old town here that needs money to be restructured, to be fixed, to be brought up to date, to help improve our school system, etc., etc., etc. We need balance. Like a tightrope walker, we are continually trying to seek our balance. We can't be just a bedroom community, because most of our taxes come from the businesses and the industry that we have in our town, because that's all advantageous taxes. And now that we're getting more 5013Cs, we need them even more. And there were people in this meeting that understand that, and we're speaking that way. Also, when houses get old, cottages get old, they need repair. And if people are paying all their money for taxes, they don't put it into repairing their business establishment, their house, their cottage, or whatever else may be. And as college and education costs keep going up, things get harder and harder, tougher and tougher to achieve the balance we need. Another major speaker was resident Charlene Lavoie, who lives down in a neighborhood near the old factories down near Meadow Street, down in that area. And she's very concerned about cleaning up these old factories and the contaminated ground we have all over the place caused by those factories in the old days. There are many more new regulations now that prevent against a lot of that. But we do have tough rules. If somebody buys one of these factories, then they become responsible for the cleanup. They don't want to do that. They don't want to pay for that. So they'll go elsewhere, where they don't need to clean up the property, where they knock down the old buildings, or all that kind of thing. So anyway, she spoke a bit about her neighborhood and the things that were needed. And of course, we also need the housing that produces advantageous tax revenue as well, out in Winchester and on the lake and elsewhere in town where this kind of housing exists or can exist. So over the years I've been here, since 2002, I've heard this not only from Charlene, but also from the Naders, Claire especially, when I go around to meetings, which I don't do much anymore, but I did it all the time when I first retired because I thought I could be more help than it turned out to be. I started this programs because I learned from John Gauger years ago when he had his programs that maybe you could do some good. But ever since I started, things have gotten worse, not better. They've fallen down. We're down in the hole. The state doesn't have as much money anymore to help us. The feds will be in the same pickle. People want to leave town. They don't want to come here. The school grades are down. Bottom 6% or so, maybe a little higher now. K through 6 in the state. People are homeschooling. People are sending their kids to Hartford and other towns, at our expense mostly. A lot of people are putting them into St. Anthony's, which does have good grades. And they have to pay for that, of course. And they have to get the money to be able to do so, so they probably have to work out of town somewhere. Most people, including Charlene Lavoie and the Naders, do understand what needs to be done. But the devil is in the details. And they don't always understand the balance that is needed to get the job done. So that's where we differ, and probably always will. They'll live longer than I will, so they might see more than I do. But all I can do is judge by my past, and by the experiences of others, and by the numbers that we keep seeing in the spreadsheets, and by the lousy finance board that we have that isn't up to the task and never will be, because name recognition is king in our town, and anybody can get on the finance board. Most of them, of course, don't know anything about finance at all. And what is our biggest concern and problem in our town? Finance, balancing our finances. We have better people to help us now with our new town manager, Harvard MBA, and successful businessman over the years. He moved a company in here from Ohio. He moved it into New Hartford years ago. I don't know how many more companies are coming in from Ohio into New Hartford or any of the surrounding towns, but it would be interesting to find out. Well, we're halfway through this program tonight. Let's have that song again. Not B and Z. This one's for you, Woody. Hope you like it. Learned it all from you. After this brief bit, we'll continue with more of the program, and we'll try to wake up the two Bills before we go on. This town is your town. This town is our town. This town was made for you and me. Wake up, Bills. Wake up, Bills. Please wake up, Bills. We're halfway through the program now. These P&Z meetings, they can't put you to sleep. I know that. Ralph Nader and I were lucky enough to have a lady resident of the town stand up and speak her mind concisely, loud and clear, to the Planning and Zoning Commission. The town manager was in the audience as well. He stayed through the whole meeting, and he was very interested, I'm sure, in hearing everybody speak, commission members and audience alike, because he's fairly new to the job and he's trying to get up to speed. The land use director is also new to the job, a little less than a year or so, and he's trying to get more up to speed. They're both interested in growing the grand list, the advantageous portions. They're also interested in cleaning up the blight, and they're also interested in balancing the expenses so that the town gets some of the money as well, not just the schools. They're trying to do their best. So anyway, they were there and they heard this lady give her opinion of the roads in the town, the taxes in the town, other issues in her neighborhood and around town. She was very helpful. Other people will hear her speak, and hopefully that will encourage them to get up at the next continuation of this public hearing on October 11th and speak their minds, no matter which part of the town they come from. She's not from the lake. We get a lot of people, of course, from the lake that come to these meetings. And we don't get too many from the town. And we don't get too many from Winchester. It seems that it's the lake residents that are the most concerned. But this lady doesn't live on the lake. She represents some of the views of some of the town people and the problems they face and the costs that they bear. The Highland Lake District residents and all of their relatives, friends, neighbors, extended family, children, etc., are very lucky because during this public hearing and in preparation for this public hearing, they've had Michael Ham, former long-term member of Planning and Zoning in the good old days when they were trying to build the grand list, the advantageous portions of the grand list, like the different industrial parks and things like that. He was vice chairman of Planning and Zoning for about 6 years, and I think he was on Planning and Zoning for about 16 years altogether, as well as running his own business in town and in Torrington and around this area. But anyway, when Section 10.6, he lives on the lake, when 10.6 was taken from the planning and zoning regulations without a proper replacement on July 22nd, 2016, Mike decided to speak up. So he went to the hastily prepared public hearing that few people went to. Ike went, and a few other people went. David LaPointe went. And we spoke up. And we've been speaking up ever since, trying to spread the word, let people know what's happening with these planning and zoning total rewrite of the regs, and get them to sign petitions, submit applications to the town, and come to the public hearings and speak up for their rights. We've also encouraged them to go to the land use director and the town manager, who are really in charge of getting revenue into this town. EDC doesn't have any power. They can recommend and they can consult, and they're a big, heavy committee. And remember, the CAMO was designed by a committee, probably of about 11 people, like the EDC was when I was on there for 3 months, when I saw that I wasn't going to be able to do any good there. I was told that by the last town manager. You're wasting your time, so to speak. It was a little more polite than that, but that was the message. So I got out of there. But anyway, Michael Ham came to the public hearing, and he spoke. He did a lot of study and preparation and talked to many experts before he did come, lawyers and P&Z experts and things like that around the area. And he boned up, had to give up a lot of time from his business, because every time you try to explain something, as I've been saying on these programs, it takes a half an hour of your time per person, and then another 15 or 20 minutes or more to listen to their gripes and all the things that they complain about, similar to what's happening in this public hearing. You'll hear more about all this when you go to YouTube or go to the Charter website once they have their public hearing recording, which lasts 2 hours and 45 minutes, up for you to see. Now on Charter, it's only up for a limited period of time, but on YouTube, it's up. It'll be up there as long as we need it to be up there through the next 2 public hearings, if the second one is necessary after the next public hearing. So anyway, there's no excuse for not understanding what the problems are here. So Mike got up. P&Z is never too happy to see Mike, because he does know a lot about the planning and zoning regulations and the process and business in town, and how important it is to balance the advantageous, profitable incoming revenue each year and its growth with the inevitable increase in the expenses over the years and their growth. And now we're fighting state and federal problems where they don't have any money to give us. We got this ancient architecture for roads, bridges, and all the polluted grounds here. And our needs are increasing. 65% of our budget goes for the schools. We closed one down recently. Nobody wants to buy it. We probably won't even be able to give it away. So we'll probably have to set up a sinking fund or something to save up for the rainy day when we'll have to take the building down. That won't be cheap. And there's a good possibility that with the drop in the numbers of people, kids going to school anymore and everything, there's a good possibility we might have to close another school. And you know, we have a very weak Board of Education. Matter of fact, it's sitting on the bench now because the CEO, Mr. Travellini, has come in from the state, and he's come in without a lot of the resources they told him he would have when he took the job. And he pushed the Board of Education aside. I thought it was a good move. And then we have our weak finance board, which is made up of Uncle Tom Cobley and all, who don't know much about finance. And they have all kinds of theories. Their theories are, well, until we get the schools all straightened out, we won't be able to get any businesses to come to town or any industry to come to town. I don't agree with any of that, but that's their thinking. They also have the funny idea that art will save our town, that we'll become an art community, and we'll be a town where people live but don't work. So as I said in the meeting, and you'll hear it when you watch it on YouTube or on the Charter website, go stand down by McDonald's in the morning about 8 o'clock and watch the cars streaming out of our town to get to work over towards Hartford, if not in Hartford itself, and then go back at 5 p.m. or so, maybe even starting at 3 or 4 p.m., and see them all streaming back into town. It's very dangerous. Don't try to cross the street, whatever you do, because the people are going fast. Some of them are distracted one way or another, and there's plenty of ways nowadays to be distracted when you're speeding down Route 44 through Winsted, or to Winsted, or away from Winsted. They might even be just drinking their coffee and having their donuts while they're driving. They could be texting. They could be listening to the radio. They could be dancing and singing. They got dogs sitting on their laps. There's all kinds of things like that you see. I don't blame anybody for that. It's not the police's fault. It's not your fault. There's a change in the times. I have been partly responsible for some of it because I was president of Internet Corporation and was starting out, Internet Systems Corporation. And look what it's grown into. It'll be replacing our schools someday. And it'll be replacing our teachers in 50 years. Things are going to change. And Winsted has to change as well. And that's why when John was talking during the public hearing, he was saying, hey, let's get in there. Let's get in there and do what we need to do to be up with the future. Let's get involved with these facilities. Let's attract them to our town. Let's attract the kind of people that work in those installations to our town. Because they're usually high-paying jobs, and they can afford to help us with our tax problem. And also, we're facing next year, this coming year, they already started doing the work to prepare for it, a revaluation of our properties. Last time they went down 20% on average. But the mill rate, of course, goes up because the town doesn't cut its spending. They spend more. More is better. Less is bad. Now, I'm in favor of the town spending more because they've been starved for many years by the school systems. And we need the school systems too. So my answer is not to become a bedroom community. That's like insane. What you need to do is attract businesses, non-polluting type industries, families that don't have children in the school system. For example, they could be senior citizens, They could be families where the kids are already grown up, and that's what comes to the lake a lot, and that's what comes to Winchester from New York and New Jersey and places like that. Some just come for the summer, but that's all right. They pay the taxes. I think now that the lake pays about 25% of the taxes, and Winchester 25%, and the town about 50%. You'll hear a little differently in the public hearing, but I don't think they have the facts right there. And all in all our taxes just about cover the school expenses. It's the money we get from the feds and the state that we can direct more towards the town side of our business here. So it's very complex. It's much too difficult for many to understand. There is a tendency around here, I guess maybe we used to be a sheep farming country because everybody tries to pull the wool over your eyes around here. But anyway, Mickey Ham, he's in there. He's trying to educate people. He knows a lot about planning and zoning. He knows a lot about business. He was vice chairman of during the good old days when Tony Canavo was involved and other businessmen. Well, up until 1960, we were run by businessmen. Then we changed our form of government, and the businesses left. So there are no more businessmen here, and the ones that are here get vilified if they try, and Mike gets vilified quite a bit as well, even by his own political party. They get vilified for trying to help. People will say, whoa, don't go to their business. They're trying to grow the grand list and get more advantageous revenue in town. And they don't want to become a bedroom community because they know that the taxes will kill us if we become a bedroom community. We won't be able to survive. There are some people think that we better start diversifying fast. We better start going to schools in other towns. We better distribute a lot of our needs to other towns because we are going to feel it if we become a bedroom community. And that's what people tell me that know how to read regulations and can see the trends, and I've been able to see it myself from I've been here since 2002. Started with the POCD. The POCD committee was mainly liberal extremists, some from the middle of the normal distribution curve, but not many from the right-hand side. It was imbalanced. I went to a few of the meetings because I was asked if I would attend. I didn't last long because I couldn't get a word in edgewise, as I said in the public hearing, and you'll hear that when you listen to it. So things are changing. And Michael Ham is a good blessing for our town right now. If we had more Michael Hams, we'd be better off. If we had more people that were on planning and zoning in the good old days, we'd be better off. If the ones that were on planning and zoning and EDC in the good old days would come out of hiding and participate, that would also help our town. But so far, they don't seem willing to do it. And they have all kinds of reasons. Some of them have been burned too badly. Some of them have outgrown it or are too old to do it anymore. Others are just fed up with it, don't want to pay any attention to it because they don't see any improvement. You wouldn't believe how many plans we've had for downtown over the last 20 years or so. We had the 1990 plan that we hired Yale University people and all to produce. Well, we never did anything about it. So Mike's trying to help us. The new town manager, Bob Geiger's trying to help us, Robert Geiger. He brought a town business into New Hartford from Ohio when he was younger. He's worked all over the world as an MBA from Harvard, helping people with their financial problems. Steve Sedlowski is caught in the middle. But he's a good man. And given the air cover that we're trying to give him, I'm trying to give him air cover by putting out the spreadsheet and the pipeline next week. And having this thing called Spreading the Word, where I ask everybody to go see him, tell them what their concerns are. Pay some attention to it. That's called air cover. P&Z is here to stay for at least another 10 years the way it's constituted because they have 5-year terms. And they're the ones that got us in this pickle in the first place over the last 10 years. Now they want to stay another 10 years and make the pickle even bigger. This town is your town. This town is my town. This town was made for you and me, not P&Z. While you're waiting for the continuation of the public hearing that'll take place on October 11th, 2016, be at 7 p.m. most likely at a location yet to be picked out. Might even be the town hall. We'll see. They'll let us know pretty quickly. They have to. Can't wait too long. But in the meantime, you can see Steve Sedlowski, the land use director. Been around almost a year now. He's very positive. He's caught in the middle, but he'll try to do his best to keep his job and do a good job. And the new town manager, Harvard, MBA, successful businessman around the world, moved a company from Ohio to New Hartford many years ago. Has 2 or 3 homes in the area. Very smart when it comes to managing money. Go see them. Ask them if your plans will be affected by these new proposed, totally rewritten planning and zoning regulations. Let them know what your needs are. This town was made for you and me, not P&Z. And I think that Bob and Steve will want to help you. Anything you can do to better understand the regulations before the continuation of the public hearing is in your best interests. If you have a big project, you might even want to hire a land use attorney and a land use engineer to help you prepare to go and see Steve and Bob Geiger. But you got to do it all before they officially change these totally rewritten planning and zoning regulations. And then, as you'll see when you look at the programs on YouTube or on the Charter website, that this affects a lot of people. The bookkeeping will help everybody. The P&Z, ZBA, the applicants, the engineers, the legal people, that'll all help. But as you know, the devil is in the details. And you got to know what's in the details, and that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to spreading the word about what's in the details and get people to come in and review their details with Steve Sedlowski and Bob Geiger, who want to do good for the town. This town is your town. This town is my town. This town was made for you and me, not P and Z. You can all thank Woody, too. Woody would have helped us. He would have spread the word. He would have written a song. Thank you, Woody. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Bob. Thanks, Steve. Maybe we can get on top of this thing after trying for the last 10 years. And a pox on you, devil, for getting in our way. But we will win. Eventually, no matter who you have on your side right now. Good night. Brian O'Haron, spreading the word. Let's get this job done.